Hello, I'm going to divide the communism PowerPoint into three videos. One is basically going to um, just review liberalism versus totalitarianism. Another one is going to talk about communism prior to the revolution, and then the last one about post-revolutionary communism. So in this first video, let's just go over what's liberalism and then as compared to non-liberalism, right? So you guys will remember that liberalism is about the values of individualism, of freedom, of democracy, of just equal rights for everybody and all that, right? Um, as opposed to that, we have another ideology that basically thinks that liberalism is not good, okay, and that there's some values that liberalism fails to address. So all those experiments, the social experiments that have been done, the wave, the Milgram experiment, the Stanford prison experiment, they all essentially claim the same thing, that in a society that offers a lot of freedom and a lot of options and a lot of democracy, these are the values that are not addressed: order, belonging, and the actual real freedom. And I'm going to explain that in a second, okay? So, even if you think of coronavirus time, and how certain countries like China, for example, managed to like really take away a lot of people's rights and freedoms and shut down entire cities in order to fight it, versus a democratic society like Canada, where there's some recommendations, but people still essentially do have a freedom to go out to shop and to congregate despite the government uh, changes and recommendations. They're not as enforced, right? Okay. Whereas in totalitarianism, they're really enforced. Like when it comes to order, like people really have to fall in and follow, right? When it comes to belonging, you have to also feel that you're doing everything for the state, for the greater good of the state. And then eventually, this concept of real freedom versus distorted freedom according to totalitarians. So totalitarians say like you're living in a world where your freedom is an illusion, right? Even though you think you're free, you're still like enslaved by either your religion or by your norms or by capitalism. So all you end up doing is, following whatever the society tells you to do and work and nothing else. And that's not real freedom according to them. They say that a real freedom is that when you're free from all these conservative, traditional ways, and when you turn yourself to just be that belonging to the state, and when you're not into individualism anymore, but when you're just into collectivism, right? Okay. 1984, for example, Orwell's 1984. Winston Smith, at the end of the book, realizes that he's truly free only once he figures out, oh my God, I love the dictator, so I'm truly free. So that's the actual real freedom. Me realizing, my individualism is not important anymore. I'm just like a part of the group, and that's when I'm truly free. When I just belong, have that sense of belonging to the group, and do it in a very orderly fashion. Okay. Um, you guys will remember that historically there was a lot of opposition to liberalism, like Luddites, for example, were one of them. So workers just felt that they were being exploited. Think back to Animal Farm, the beginning of the movie, the revolution, and just the opposition to liberalism, the fact that there were owners who were exploited, right? So liberalism is just like one way of seeing the world, right? There can be other ways of seeing the world, and one of them is that authoritarian way. And to establish that, well, you need a dictator, right? Um, So what do all the dictators then have to introduce that did not exist before? So instead of elections, democracy, they now have to have just one party system. So no more pluralistic, so no more political freedom on the political axis. There should be political control. Legitimacy is more emotional than rational and reasonable like in the Enlightenment times. It's all about I feel there are these enemies. I feel I should help my state. I feel we should kill all the Jewish people and so on, right? So it's not rational because rationally it would be like, why should we kill off 10% of our population? It doesn't make any sense. But the emotion is telling you must do it, right? So again, it's very similar to those social experiments that you guys had for your homework. Then number three, the political control needs to be established, and all the political freedom in freedom of assembly, of protests, of demonstration, that should all be taken away. And then eventually, number four, that's, again, think back to Animal Farm. When it comes to executive power of the pigs, it was like kind of vague. It was shifting all the time. Even the commandments were changing. Nobody knew exactly what their power was, and that's just another characteristic of dictatorship, that they might start nice like in the Animal Farm. Some dictators were really fairly nice in the beginning. Even Hitler, if you think of him in 1933, 34, he was still like kind of democratic and not that bad to anybody yet. And then eventually within a few years he just becomes Napoleon the pig and just destroys everything, right? So that's kind of the issue, right? That when nobody's there to control those dictators, then you know the Hobbesian idea kicks in, and they just become like completely mean, completely crazy, because just nobody's there to tell them, hey, you're not acting normal here. Just a complete unchecked power, right? Um, so dictatorship, it's all about those elites, right? So pigs were the elites in the Animal Farm, right? They were making all decisions, and then the animals, or the actual people in a real society, soon realize, wow, there's no equality. Even so you guys remember how there's two totalitarian or authoritarian systems. One is leftist communism, which says we're all equal, and one is fascism on the right side, which does not claim that, right? But even in communism, which was the Animal Farm, the other animals realize, wait a minute, we're not equal. And even one of the commandments eventually changes into all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others, right? And some drink milk and eat apples, and others don't. Some sleep in beds, and others don't. So that was one of the big realizations in the movie of some animals. It just says on in the commandments that we're equal, but we're not, right? And that's one reason why communism, for example, fails, right? That there's the elites. It's a hierarchy, right? Just like previously, before totalitarianism, we had hierarchy of either like kings on top, or the clergy on top, or later capitalists on top. Well, what we have now in totalitarianism is that the ruling political party is on top, or pigs, right? And then below them we have dogs, and below them we have other animals. So it just that hierarchy is inevitably always established. And how do they justify it? Well, they say like people are selfish, people don't know what to do, so the state should make all the decisions. It's all about that rapid decision making. Just thinking back to Corona times, dictators would say like, giving people freedoms and options and this and that, that's not good. We just like lock everybody for 2 weeks, nobody leaves, and then we're not gonna have virus at all, because that's then in for the greater good, for everybody's benefits, right? So just suspend rights and freedoms for 2 weeks, all the viruses are gonna die within 2 weeks, problem solved, right? Okay, so if we just have somebody who can control society fully, well, then you know everything is gonna work just great. Okay, so they just justify that way. They say freedom is not good, individualism is not good. When you allow individualism, people go to the stores and spread the virus. When you discontinue individualism, well, then that's when we can tackle all these issues. Okay, and what are some of the techniques that they use? It's obviously very forceful, lots of propaganda, indoctrination. You have to like follow what they say, um, then when it comes to popular discontent, um, you have to always kind of like turn the attention towards some real or imaginary enemies. They're called scapegoats in this system. Um, and it seems like people are participating in the government, like in the animal farm, right? It seemed like animals were, like asked, but the decisions were still made only by the pigs, right? And then there has to be a vision, okay, or that utopian idea that we're striving towards this perfect society. So in communism, perfect equality. In fascism, this perfect Aryan society where everybody's going to be blonde and blue-eyed and tall and healthy and all that. So utopia that eventually turns to dystopia in both cases. Okay. Um, so yeah, this is just like covering, some of the more characteristics of dictatorship, totalitarianism. Just like one leader and that leader having all the power, being in charge of everything, controlling everything, and all that. Okay. So just totalitarian dictatorship. The idea is that you have to control society like totally, right? That's why it's called totalitarianism. Okay. And then in the next videos, I'm gonna switch to talking about Marxism, communism.